5 months, about 500 Nigerian delegates were saddled with deliberations on the political system and future of a country that has seen debilitating socio-economic, ethnic, religious and political challenges worsened by terrorism and insurgency that has claimed thousands of lives in the last 5 years. These men and women who were tasked with the responsibility to find lasting solutions to Nigerians' problems passed over 600 resolutions dealing with law, policy and constitutional amendments. Now, as Nigerians look up to the federal government for the full implementation of these resolutions, Dateline Nigeria will take a look at the conference and see what Nigerians think about it and really if it was worth the while. My name is Okamechi Somto and this is Dateline Nigeria. Nigeria is a country of extreme wealth and extreme poverty. According to the United Nations, Nigeria ranks amongst the most unequal countries of the world, with the bulk of its wealth in the hands of a few individuals and corporate organizations. The country is often characterized by varying degrees of social injustice, inequality, oppression, exploitation, ethnic conflicts, and social tension. These have caused friction between the government and the people over the years and threatened the unity and continued survival of Nigeria. These challenges perhaps informed the deliberations and subsequent resolutions of the National Conference held in Abuja. As the delegates submitted their 10,000-page report to the convener, President Goodluck Jonathan, some Nigerians expressed cynicism over the whole exercise.
Well, if they like, let them end gracefully, let them end successfully. I still say it was of no use. They were not elected. You've got to understand that. They were appointed by somebody. Those who were elected are in the Senate, they're in the House of Assembly. So whatever they wanted to do, these people could have done it. It's just calling them to order.
The video I watched, so many people gave meaningful contributions, meaningful ideas, and minds were renewed. I think it will go a long way. It will.
The only thing I want to advise is that they should allow the amendment of a section in the 1999 Constitution should be amended to allow a referendum, so that this very proposal will become our, constitution.
With all these pointers from the just concluded National Conference, I spoke with one of the delegates, Hawa Shekarau. She shares her experience and what she believes has been achieved with this conference. My guest on the show is Hawa Ibn Shekarau. She is a member of the Law, Judiciary, Human Rights and Legal Reform Committee of the National Conference and also the President for Federation of International Women Lawyers, FIDA. So she's very special to us on the show today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Let me ask about your experience at the National Confab. It's just ended after 5 months. Nigerians have described it in various ways. Some think it was just a jamboree, and some people think it was actually fruitful. So tell us, what was it like, and do you think the whole essence was worthwhile?
Well, for me, truly, I want to let you know that for me, it was a worthwhile experience. I mean, people look at things differently, and some people have the reasons why they think it is a jamboree. Of course, you don't blame people. We've had series of confabs in this country, and for very many of them, their reports are still lying down in the bookshelves, and so you can understand why people would still be very cynical, about the outcome of the confab. But coming from an insider, somebody who was there and who participated actively from beginning to the end, I want to assure you, for me, it was worthwhile. If we look at the background that led to the confab and, the events, the events that were unfolding in the country in the run-up to the confab, you'll agree with me that we had gotten to a point in this country where we really needed to sit down and talk and discuss amongst ourselves to understand what's going on. Where, of course, we had some series of challenges bedeviling this country. Insecurity in almost every part of the country, in terms of Boko Haram militancy or insurgency, whatever, depending on the way you look at it. And then, of course, we have the kidnappings, the insecurity of evil in the southern part of this country and all that. And then, of course, coupled with different ethnic conflicts. And, it was like every part of the country, there was one thing or the other that was threatening to tear us apart. And of course, you also had people who felt that they were being shortchanged, people who felt that they were not being regarded as part and parcel of this country, some people who felt that they are sacred cows, or some people who felt that they were the chosen few who it is their sole prerogative to rule this country and all that. So things were really getting to a head. So for me, the confab came at the right time for us to sit down and talk. If you look at what transpired, there were times when tempers were flared, tempers were really high, people were charged. It was as if we were going to just completely break up and end the show. But at the end of the day, we all saw the reason why it is necessary for us to remain united. And all through those challenges, the crisis and all that, we were able to come out stronger and better. And for me, it is a lesson to the fact that no matter the challenges that are bedeviling this country, they are not beyond us. They are challenges that we can, with careful planning, discussion, consensus, negotiation, and what have you, we can come out tops and make our country stronger.
Yeah, good to know. I must really commend you and your colleagues for overcoming all this crisis in the House and still emerging with lots of resolutions. I understand there are over 600 resolutions. Which of them do you think is the most important at this time for the country?
Yeah, well, I would speak from the perspective of where I'm coming from. I was nominated to the National Confab as a delegate of the International Federation of Women Lawyers under the women groups category. So by implication, I was there representing the women groups. And it's from that basis I want to say that for me, the most important resolution was a resolution that recommended 35% affirmative action for women to be inserted in the Nigerian Constitution. I think that to me I went with that in my hands, or let me say I went with that in my kitty when I was going to the confab, and I thank God. I mean, it was in the kitty of some of the things I would want to see happen at the confab. And so when the confab ended, I had it right there, that which is which to me is a clear case of having achieved at the confab. You know, in the past we've seen how women have continually campaigned, advocated, lobbied to have 35% affirmative action positions to be kept for women, which is not strange, because even in developed countries, affirmative action is a temporary mechanism that is introduced in governance in order to address marginalization or discrimination that a group has suffered. We've seen that play out in other African countries, and we are saying, why can't this happen in Nigeria? And so for many years, women groups, women advocates, gender advocates have been saying that there is need for us to address the apathy of political participation of women in scheme of things. And in the past, what we have seen is a kind of mere, what I would call mere tokenism, where a few women are selected and made ministers, and we say, oh, we've gotten affirmative action. Now, what this recommendation has done is to ensure that this recommendation is inserted in the Constitution, and that the affirmative action is not just at the federal level, but that it trickles down right to the bottom. Secondly, you know, being also a human rights advocate, for me, a major recommendation of the Confab was the recommendation that ensured that Chapter 2 of the Constitution is now made justiciable. If you look at the Constitution, it talks about the Chapter 2 deals basically with socio economic rights, right to health, right to housing, secondary rights. You know, we have recommended that they be merged together with Chapter 4, which deals with fundamental human rights, you know, and they are now to be made justiciable, meaning that government will be under an obligation to ensure that these rights are enjoyed by Nigerians. And I think that is very key. If we make that happen, just like we see it play out in South Africa, where socioeconomic rights are justiciable, you know, it means that it will no longer be the story of, oh, we will provide these services only when, as and when, you know, government is able to, while billions are being stashed away or siphoned away through corrupt practices, and the poor masses are left to their own fate when it comes to issues of right to health and right to housing and all that. And I think that that would really help to stem, you know, the level of corruption that we're seeing in this country.
Yeah, speaking of human rights, and also by a little bit back to the affirmative action, I believe the affirmative action goes beyond just political participation of women. Sure. There are other things that affect women. Mm-hmm. I know Nigeria is one of the countries that have issues when it comes to women, things like violence against women, whether domestic or any other which way you want to put it, and things like that. So, and were these issues equally highlighted? And because I'm looking at what really the outcome holds for women, were these issues highlighted, and how have they been put in so that the lives of women will be transformed in this country?
Yes, I think the committee that dealt with the committee on social sector, which was the committee that looked at issues of women and other aspects under the social sector. I think they also came out openly to discuss that. Even in my committee, the Law Reform Committee, we also talked about the issue, for instance, of domestic violence, particularly sexual violence such as rape and all that. We also discussed the fact that there is need for some kind of policy guidance regarding how to ensure that cases of violence are well documented, and when victims come to report, the people need to be aware of what they need to do in order to ensure that credible witness or evidence that would secure conviction for perpetrators are not eroded away by the time these matters are reported. But also, I'm aware that there is a pending bill that is in the National Assembly seeking to provide stiffer punishment and stiffer laws that would eradicate violence against persons in this country.
You mentioned security earlier, and then I know presently Nigeria is immersed in all sorts of security crises, and we're looking for ways to better respond to these security challenges we have. So, of the resolutions reached at the floor of the Confab, how have you proposed to address these issues better in the country?
Right, the resolutions that came out of the Confab are mere recommendations, and in order to take those recommendations forward, if you look at our committee, our reports, they are divided into, different sections. The first section is the one that has to do with policy actions, recommendations that require policy formulations. These are recommendations that you do not need to take to the National Assembly. The president and his executive might need to look at it and then instruct the necessary ministry or parastatal or agency to put together a policy that will take care of those recommendations. There's also the section that deals with legislative action. And of course, in Nigeria, we know that before anything passes into law, it will need to be initiated as a bill in the National Assembly, and it goes through the processes of lawmaking before it is passed into law. And there is also the recommendations that deal with constitutional amendments. They are recommendations that can only be implemented only when the Constitution is amended. So these are the different sections. We are working hard, advocating, lobbying, and asking that these recommendations see the light of day in terms of that they are implemented. And I know that in some caucus that I belong to, we have decided to even set up committees that would engage even the National Assembly, that would engage the governors, that would engage even the National Exco in order to ensure that, we sustain the momentum, so that something happens. So I can assure you that we will not rest on our oars until we see things happen regarding our recommendations.
Speaking about seeing things happen, I would have imagined that maybe there should have been something like a referendum so that Nigerians can vote and decide what we think about this and if we want this to be implemented. So virtually everybody can participate in this. But I'm not sure the Constitution as it is now provides for that. So did you take that into consideration? What was you thinking while you were at the House reaching this agreement?
I can assure you that this issue of referendum also came up in our discussions. Some people were highly emotive about it and wanted at all costs that we insert that our recommendations be passed through referendum. But the truth of the matter is that, as a lawyer, we all know, for me as a lawyer, I know that you cannot, go into a referendum as our constitution is today, because it is not provided for. So what is the legal basis? There has to be a legal basis for under which something can be done. The only thing is to recommend that this referendum is inserted in the Constitution.
Did you make that recommendation? For a referendum to be inserted?
To be inserted.
Yeah. To be inserted into the Constitution for
future. Yeah, that also came out to be so that it will guide future constitutional amendments. We were not a constituent assembly, one. Number two, we were not elected. We were just nominated. So what it means is that we really do not have the mandate of the people as it were. So for us to, if we had the mandate, we're elected, and we had the mandate and we're constituent assembly, then whatever we had come up with at the end of the confab can easily be said, yes, this is a constitution making process of the people, and the people will need to be given the opportunities to ratify the recommendations of the confab.
Issues like devolution of power was something else that stood out at this meeting. Could you tell us a bit about this and why it is important at this time?
Long before the confab, there has been a lot of conversation, discourse around the need to have, a real true federalism being implemented in the country. If you look at the Constitution of Nigeria as it is today, you'll discover that it is a lopsided federalism that we have, where the central, that's the federal government, is having so many responsibilities to handle, whereas the state governments have, just a little, and the truth of the matter is that it is the general consensus of people that the federal government can actually do without some of those responsibilities, and those responsibilities can be shifted to the state government so that there can be a balanced and true federal system of government in operation in the country.
Also, there was the issue of revenue sharing. What is wrong with it the way it is today?
Well, for some of us, we really don't know what is wrong with it. If you ask me, I really don't know why. I think it is an order, because we have the oil producing states still getting 13% over and above the non-oil producing states, and you also have the federal government getting a larger chunk of revenue allocation, compared to the states, and everybody is craving for more. Now we got to the confab. People from the oil producing regions are insisting that they need more, because the oil that is generating the income, is coming from their domain. They need to be, in fact, they came with 50% demand. They said they wanted 50% of the oil revenue that is coming from their domain. And of course, that Nigeria is basically relying on the revenue coming from oil. And so what that means is that at the end of the day, the federal government and the other states would have to share only 50%. At that rate, I'm not sure there's any other state that can even meet their obligations in terms of paying salaries. Not to talk of capital projects, towards development of the country and the states and all that. So there was a lot of negotiation going back and forth here and there, and they were able to come down from their high horses and came down to, I think it was 21.5% or so, and even that was not agreeable. Finally, I think one of the consensus was that, okay, we were ready to give you, to make it 18%, provided there would be a special fund to be given to the Northeast, the North Center, and the Northwest in order to address the collateral damage that these regions have suffered as a result of the Boko Haram insurgency and all that. And I think it was at that point that things completely broke down. And at the end of the day, we couldn't agree. And so it was recommended that we return it back to the federal government, who would set up a technical committee to look at the modalities, look at all the issues, and then come up with a solution. In the course of the confab, there were revelations that were shared with members of the confab, the delegates, which showed that almost every part of this country is well endowed with mineral deposits. In fact, it was during the confab that I learned that my state, Kaduna State, had special deposits of minerals that are not even found in other parts of the country.
And then you will ask, what is happening to these other places?
Exactly.
Nobody is exploring them.
That's the point I'm into. Now, these things are there. They're just lying down there waiting to be tapped. Now, there is a special fund created by the federal government that is to be used for mineral development in every state. If you check, that fund is not being used for that purpose for which it was set up.
The issue of security, we didn't fully address it initially. We seem to derail. Yes, I know there was the issue of state policing. Quickly, do you think that is actually needed now to help us respond better to the security challenges we have?
Yes, that was also another tough call for at the confab. You know, there were people who felt that one of the challenges with the security situation that we have in this country would have been better managed if the states have control of their own policing mechanism in their states. And also, it was also another form of divesting the federal government of too much weight in terms of devolution of powers, you know. And again, the truth of the matter is that there are some states that may not be able to effectively, you know, manage a state police because they do. It costs money to manage the police, and so one of the things we are, some of the states are concerned is that we may not have the resources, particularly if the issue of giving more derivation to the oil-producing states, you know, is established. Then it means more dwindling. There will be a dwindling resources to the states. How would they be able to sustain the state position? However, I think I cannot lose sight of the fact that even as it is today, that the federal government is responsible for policing in this country, you still find that state governments would always, or let me not say as well, they are always funding the police. You watch on the TV, you hear of a particular state has bought series of Hilux buses, series of logistical support for the federal government, for the police, in order to aid their work. So a lot of the state governors are expending money, more or less like they are funding, you know, the police. But I want to assure you that, well, one of the recommendation was that state policing is recommended for the states who can afford it. I am not sure all the states can afford it.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure having you here.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
The national conference, which eventually ended after a prolonged 5 months, may have been described by some Nigerians as a jamboree in lieu of the challenges the country is faced with. But the delegates insist that the only reason why they were holed up at the National Judicial Institute in Abuja all this while was to find lasting solutions to these challenges. So, as they handed in their reports to President Goodluck Jonathan as a package of instruments with which to transform the nation, it is therefore expected that the full implementation of these resolutions will be expedited to bring about the change we need. My name is Okamechi Somto, and you've been watching Dateline Nigeria. Thank you for being there with us. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.